Now, I want to tell you about the thing, the gas chamber. They asked me already about this thing here. The gas chamber, how it looked. Very simple. It was all concrete. There was no window. There was nothing in it. Beside, on top of you, there was wires, and it looked like, you know, the water gonna come out from it. There are two doors, steel doors, from one side and from the other side. The people went in to the gas chamber from the one side. Like myself, I was in it, doing the job as a barber. When it was full, the gas chamber, the size of it was, I would say, 18 by 18 or 18 by 70. I didn't measure at that time, just to look like I would say I look here the room around. I wouldn't say exactly how big it is. And they pushed in as many as they could. It was not allowed to have the people standing up with their hand down because there is not enough room. But when people raised their hand like that, there was more room to each other. And on top of that, they throw in kids, 2, 3, 4 years old kids on top of them. And we came out. The whole thing, it took, I would say, between 5 and 7 minutes. The door opened up, not from the side they went in, but the side from the other side. And from the other side, the group, people working in Treblinka #2, which their job was only about dead people. They took out the corpses. Some of them dead, and some of them still alive. They dragged them to the ditches. And over there, they covered them. Big ditches, and they covered them. That was the beginning of Treblinka.
Forced labor camp for Jews known as Treblinka, later referred to as Treblinka I. Now, the killing center was referred to as Treblinka II. And it was the third killing center after Belzec, which you heard a little bit about right down there, and Sobibor, which was already functioning as a part of Operation Reinhard, the SS plan to murder almost 2 million Jews, which were living in German administrative territory of occupied Poland. So it was intended for the extermination of Warsaw Jews and was located in the Warsaw district. Treblinka II was approximately a mile south of Treblinka I. And the site of the killing center was heavily wooded and hidden from view. And so they had watchtowers 26 feet tall at the four corners of the camp. And the killing center was divided into 3 parts: the reception area, and the living area where they had the barracks, like you see at the church, and the killing area. So one section contained barracks that housed the prisoners and so forth and so on. Deportations to Treblinka came mainly from the ghettos of Warsaw. There was about, they're estimating 265,000 of those deportations to Treblinka, and random districts, which made up about 346,000. Treblinka continued until the spring of 1943, and most prominent among the deportations were approximately 7,000 Jews transported from the Warsaw Ghetto after its liquidation following the Warsaw Ghetto uprising. As incoming trains arrived, the guards ordered the victims to disembark in the reception area and hand over all of their valuables. In the reception area, the men were separated from the women and children, and all had to undress. Victims were forced to run naked through a tube along a path to gas chambers that were deceptively labeled showers. And once the chamber doors were sealed behind them, a large diesel engine installed on the outside of the building pumped in carbon monoxide exhaust, killing everybody inside. Jewish inmates organized a resistance group in early 1943, and when the camp operations near completion, the prisoners feared that they would be killed, understandably. So during the summer of 1943, the resistance leaders decided to revolt. And on August 2nd, 1943, the prisoners quietly seized weapons from the camp armory. However, they were discovered before they could take over the camp, and hundreds of prisoners stormed the main gate in an attempt to escape. Many were killed by machine gun fire, and more than 300 did escape, though 2/3 of them were eventually tracked down and killed. The surviving prisoners were forced to dismantle the camp, and after completion they were shot by the German SS employees. German officials ordered that Treblinka II be dismantled in the fall of 1943. During late July 1944, Soviet troops were moving into the area. Camp authorities and guards shot 300 to 700 of the remaining Jewish prisoners.
With a pre-war Jewish population of over 350,000, Warsaw was home to Europe's largest Jewish community and a center of Jewish life and culture in Poland. The city fell to German forces in late September 1939. Beginning in October 1940, the Germans forced Warsaw's Jews, about 30% of the total population, into a ghetto that covered only 2.4% of the city. To prevent movement to and from the rest of Warsaw, the ghetto was closely guarded and enclosed by a wall that was over 10 feet high. Impoverished ghetto residents struggled for survival. In 1941 and 1942, Jews from surrounding communities were deported to the ghetto. At its height, the population exceeded 400,000. In July 1942, the Germans began mass deportations to the Treblinka Extermination camp, about 50 miles northeast of Warsaw. Ghetto residents were forced to an assembly point and crowded into railroad freight cars. When they arrived at Treblinka, most deportees were killed. By September 1942, the ghetto population was reduced to about 55,000. In January 1943, the Germans renewed deportations from the ghetto. Members of the Jewish underground resistance groups inside the ghetto took to the streets to resist the roundups. The Germans deported 6,500 Jews before halting the operation. During the next few months, resistance groups and individuals constructed bunkers and worked to obtain arms. When deportations were renewed in April 1943, the vastly outnumbered ghetto fighters fought back in an uprising that lasted nearly a month. At the end, the Germans burned the ghetto to force people out of their hiding places. By May 16, 1943, the Germans had crushed the uprising and left the ghetto area in ruins. Surviving ghetto residents were deported to concentration or extermination camps.